Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com. I've long told folks that if there was an empathy meter, I would peg it. And it so happens that some years ago, there was some marketer, I can't recall who, but some marketer, he developed an assessment. It was online, it was free, that gauged empathy. And I took it because, it had empathy in the title. Why wouldn't I? And I did peg it. But it's been really misunderstood. And I was in a conversation recently, and somebody was kind of quizzing me down about it because I've long maintained if there were an empathy meter, that I would peg it. And it's not something that I work at. It's not something that I try. I freely confess I laugh hard every day. I cry every day. I can't remember a day that I didn't tear up about something or somebody. I just do. Call me a freak, I don't know. I can watch the Olympics. So right now the Olympics are going on, and some of the human interest stories, I can absolutely get teary-eyed about the father, who raises kids on this farm, and he lost his wife, and now the son's in the Olympics, and
right.
So things like that. However, I'm asked to explain this some days ago, and in explaining it, I hadn't quite explained it this way before. I don't know why it happened on this occasion, because here we talk about compassion, and we define compassion the way the dictionary defines it. It's a focus on others. Okay, well, is that a focus on all others? No, it's not. It's not universal, and it's not equal. And so I'm explaining in this conversation that my empathy is extraordinarily high, but towards some. It's not extraordinarily
it's selective.
High. Yeah, it's not extraordinarily high toward everybody or for everybody. And as he probed and wanted me to explain further, and I use some illustrations, and they don't matter. There are people who absolutely don't help themselves. There are people at our workplaces that are absolutely filled with excuses. There are people that are low performers, historically low performers, people that we give chance after chance after chance, and they continue to be low performers. I have zero empathy for those people. I just do. Now, like I famously say, you do you. That's me. But the people that I have empathy for are the people, you could say deserving, but I don't think in those terms. So the young man who competes in the Olympics, and the poor father, he's got gray in his beard, and he's on the farm, and he's just super choked up because his son is in the Olympics, something that...
A gymnast.
Something that his wife, he knows she just would have loved this moment.
Right.
Okay, there's nothing about deserving anything. It's just, your heart goes out to this person. But let's keep it in the context of work. In the context of work, there's merit. There's just merit. I am sick and tired of the lack of merit, and I'm sick and tired of the lack of individuality being acknowledged. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics because I don't care, but as a business guy and as a leader and as a guy who cares about people, I'm tired of a lack of merit. I think the people who on merit have risen to the top, they deserve. They absolutely deserve. They have earned. They warrant my empathy. I think that low performer that is a slug and a high cost to the organization, I just have no place for them. That's me. Right. I think that they are a burden to the people who have worked hard and who have earned it and who've proven, boss, you want me to take that hill? I'm taking that hill. As opposed to the ones that we've got to just drag along, and they're just a drain. They're a drain on our budgets. They're a drain on our resources. They're a drain on our energy. They're a drain on our time. And I do not have empathy for them. And so, yeah, it's incredibly discriminating.
It's so difficult because I'm similar. And I think we were having this discussion early on when you phrased it. It's your empathy is high, but you're also highly selective. You know, it's selective. And I was like, that's a perfect description. And I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's accurate because I'm very much the same. I have had opportunities over my career to assess people. You get new people, and I have empathy for a period. Don't know if they were coached. Don't know if they were trained. Don't know if anybody invested time in them. And so I'm always a positive thinker that I'm going to invest in them. But at the point I continue to invest and you don't continue to grow, in other words, the excuses start and they're repetitive and over, it's not my fault. It's everybody else's fault. It's everybody else's issue. I don't have any ability because of the decision somebody else is making. There's no ownership in it. My empathy meter drops to zero. I'm just at that point, I'm not willing to continue investing. And you want to try, but you just can't. I remember you telling me one point, how much time are you spending on your low performers? And it was an 80% mark. You remember that discussion years ago? I said 80%. And I remember you writing on the paper, 80%. And you said, is there a reason we can't flip that? I hadn't thought of that. Why, I'm investing 80% of my time on 5% of my people, and to even change their behavior a hair doesn't move the needle at all. But if I spend 80% of my time on my high performers, which might be 30% of my group, I mean, truly, you have good performers and great performers, your superstars. Man, you spend a little time and they invest in that and grow from it, you've moved the needle even higher for not only them, but for you and the organization. So that was really key with me as we explored that and navigated it through dialogue on the impact it can have and the investment of time. If a low performer, rarely, and I very rarely have I been able to navigate and change a low performer to a high performer. Occasionally, I can probably think of 2 or 3 in my career that truly shifted, and there's a story to tell there. But most of the time, through my efforts, I will always try. Always. I mean, you know me by now. It doesn't matter what anybody's told me about somebody. It doesn't matter, I'm going to give it a go to see if my ability to influence might be different and might hold a different outcome because I believe in people. But at the point they prove that my efforts and my intent is not changing their behavior and excuses exist, you almost cannot change. In fact, you can't change it. I don't think once excuses exist, and they won't, often they don't believe they'll even start sometimes. I don't know if you've had this in your leadership. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm not trying to make excuse. And I'm like, but you just did. Which is
exactly what you're doing.
You just did, right? So when I see that behavior, that's very, I have not found an incident that I have been able to modify or change when that behavior exists in a person, especially somebody who's older, because they've had too much life that's been practiced, and it's very difficult behavior to change. It's very hard. So I agree with you on the empathy meter. I lose it. I will give it my very best as a leader to try to impact them for success. But at the point they aren't choosing to be accountable for their own behavior, that's a no-win battle that I have not yet won.
I'll insert two words here, equal and fair. But before I do, the lack of responsibility that some people will accept is problematic. It just is. I'm with you. I don't know any way to facilitate helping people necessarily out of that, depending on the circumstance, of course. But if people that's just their history, that's just too kind of how they roll, because that's their decision. And I don't think it's incumbent on leaders for us to change people. We're not in the changing people business. We're in the growing people business. It's the reason the podcast is named Grow Great. We're about growing people. Not everybody wants to grow. So we plant a dogwood tree in our front yard a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And this past winter, which we had, 10 or 14 days of really, really, really frigid, bad winter. Mm-hmm. And Donnie the dogwood didn't make it. He got named. Donnie the dogwood bit the dust because, winter just came and nothing you can do about it. Mm-hmm. I think there are people that have planted themselves and they have rooted themselves in making excuses, and they're just not going to survive the winter. The winter being a metaphor for tough times, struggle, whatever. I don't bear responsibility. I don't think a leader bears responsibility for that. I replaced Donnie with a willow tree because I love willow trees. And I mean, much more quickly than Donnie the dogwood, this willow tree has flourished. Now, they're fast growing anyway. Dogwoods are slow growing, so there's that. Okay, well, we've got people that are exactly the same. We've got people that are slow growing. We've got people that are fast growing. We got people that are high performers. But we're kind of cutting out of the herd, for the sake of this conversation, low performers. We've all got people that they're not as high performing as the willow tree. The dogwood is a slower growing tree than a willow tree, but still a tree, and still over time can blossom and be perfectly fine. So bringing it back to equal and fair, I think it's incumbent on us as leaders to be fair. But I don't think it's incumbent on us for everybody to be equal. They're not equal.
Right.
If you have got a team and you have got superior players on your team and they are treated no differently than the low performer on your team, then you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. You're just doing it wrong. It won't work. It won't work. And so we have to be discriminating, in my opinion, we have to be discriminating about the rewards. We have to be discriminating about all kinds of things while still being fair. And to your point, it depends on where people are. We've got somebody, let's say, and they've just joined our team and they're 6 weeks in, and we've got a person who's been on our team for 10 years. Are they going to be exactly the same? They're not the same. No. I can be completely fair to both, but I can't expect 6-week person to be equivalent to 10-year vet. So, yeah, I'm going to give some due consideration. I'm going to consider the context. So I would encourage everybody, be fair, give people chances. Now, how many chances you give them, that's up to you. Mm-hmm. Me, I cut the herd really quickly, and here's why. That person who is steeped in making excuses, they will become a cancer. Mm-hmm. You will quickly find other people following suit as they hear this and they see nothing done about it, and they see no price to be paid for low performance, that I can be a low performer and I can still be on the team. If you can be a low performer and still be on the team, then I'm going to tell you, over time, you will have a team that has no high performers, because the high performers will go to a high-performing team. That's where right. They don't have to play with a poor performer. I've got a very close friend, and his wife, sadly, some weeks ago got diagnosed with breast cancer. Thankfully, so far as they knew, and now it's borne out, very contained, had not spread. Surgery, double mastectomy. He's laughing. He said, yeah, he said, we got her a T-shirt that says, yeah, they're fake. The real ones tried to kill me. And we've seen that. But as it relates to this topic of empathy and leadership, sometimes we have employees who are cancerous. Mm-hmm. They damage our culture. They damage our mission. They damage our ability to do great work. Mm-hmm. And we feel like we can convert them. Mm-hmm. I know enough about science and stuff to know you're not going to convert a cancerous cell to a non-cancerous cell. You've got a couple of options, but all of the options include getting rid of it. Mm-hmm. Get it out. Get it out. Otherwise, you risk everything.
That's right.
And I don't know why that is such a difficult concept for people. And it was in that context that I was kind of having this conversation, because my empathy is high, and yet on the other hand, I think people could misconstrue and think, man, you're tough. Okay, but tough against what? Tough with who? Tough with high performers? Tough with the people that are absolutely knocking it out of the park? No, not tough at all. Completely supportive, all in, pot committed to helping these people any way I can. The low performer, I'm a fast surgeon. Mm-hmm. I'm a real fast surgeon as a leader to get them out of the organization, because I do not want to expose my best performers to that.
Well, and if you don't manage your low performers, if you're empathetic to the low performers as much as you are the high performers, not only will your high performers eventually leave, but your high performers get disengaged and demotivated, because there's so much energy and effort being spent on the non-performers that
See, and I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can spread your empathy equally amongst low performers and high performers. I've never seen it, because here's what happens. We give the empathy to the low performer. You know what that necessarily means? We don't display it to the people who deserve it.
That's right.
You can't give them both. You can't give them both what they need.
And even still, high performers recognize that.
Of course they do.
I mean, the team is watching you and seeing what you are doing, and that alone is a demotivator, whether they tell you or not. I can guarantee you they experience it and see it and don't understand it, and certainly don't appreciate it. They just don't. And the example, I remember, to your point of it's not equal, is I had to deal with a low performer. And as I'm having conversations with them and doing corrective actions and having that crucial conversation, I was spelling out exactly what they were not only doing to the team, but that I was not happy with the outcome I was getting, and they needed to decide. And I've had this conversation over the years many times. I'm kind but firm that, I don't know. I don't believe this is a fit for you. You're not happy. And they're like, no, I love my job. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't love your job, because I can see it every day, and the team knows you don't love your job. So don't tell me that you love your job, because you don't. And it's not benefiting you, and it's not benefiting us. And please don't make me make this decision, but I will. I'd rather you find somewhere that makes you happy and your life fulfilled, because it's not here. And we'll have that conversation. And during that time, the response to all that was, I feel like you're just picking on me. I said, yeah, I probably am picking on you. You know why I'm picking on you? And they're like, well, no. And I said, because you're not performing and the others are. So yes, I'm spending a lot more time and attention with you than I am the others. So you're 100% accurate. And they're like, well, I'm going to tell your boss. And I said, go for it. Because I said, I'm giving you the opportunity to fix it yourself, for you and for us. Why stay miserable? Why not go find something that makes you happy? It's certainly not this. You have great skills and abilities. They just don't fit here. The attitude is poor. The performance is poor. You complain about every team function we do, every team player that's involved with you. There's just nothing that makes you happy here. Go find your happy somewhere else. And eventually they didn't choose it, and I did. They just kept doing the same thing. And as we talked about, my empathy meter was now at 0. When you talk about pegged, yours was pegged high. Mine was pegged at 0. I had lost empathy.
Mine's either high or 0.
Yes. There's no in between.
But that's kind of the point. And the point is you cannot, I can't be all things to all people. I can't treat everybody equal because they aren't.
That's
they
right.
just aren't. So I made a decision as a young leader who I was going to put my focus on. And it was born from my own experience. It was born from my experience of being a high performer. I was in sales. So I started out as a hi-fi sales guy as a kid. So that easy to gauge, super easy to gauge. You're either selling or you're not selling. Where are you at on the sales chart? Well, I was always up toward the top, if not at the top.
Yeah.
So I knew I was a high performer. And maybe this is why I have the viewpoint that I do, that I hate that we've kind of moved, we've so migrated away from meritocracy and the individual performer. And I think it's a mistake. It's a mistake. I can promise you it's a mistake if we're trying to build a high-performing culture. It's an absolute mistake if we want our organization to be all that it can be. And,
I like your
team, and to be a team that other people want to play on. Go ahead.
I like your focus on the, when you talk about it's not equal. I would remind our audience that not being equal, first, that's not bad, because a great leader looks at the individual and where they need to grow and pushes them in the areas they need to grow. So you cannot have, it cannot be equal. If you're a great leader, you got to recognize where each of your players needs growth and push them, just like a coach would, right? A coach is going to push a quarterback way different than he's going to push the defensive end. I mean, those are two completely different jobs.
I had room in my yard for Donnie the dogwood and for the willow tree. They're not going to grow at the same pace. They're completely different breeds of trees.
And there was completely different needs.
There was room for both. Okay, well, Donnie didn't make it.
Right.
I mean, sorry, but Donnie didn't make it, but Donnie could have made it. I mean, to carry that metaphor forward,
sure.
We've got teams of people, and we've got Donnie the dogwood, and we've got, somebody's already.
Did you name Willow anything?
Yeah,
does Willow have a name?
I the willow tree did get named. I can't remember. Yeah.
Is it a her or a him?
I think I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's relatively new.
I need to tell Don this. We need to name. We just planted some fruit trees.
I think it was Wendy the willow, I think, but I'm not positive. But for the sake of this conversation, we'll call her Wendy.
New name.
There's room for Donnie and Wendy.
Yeah.
They're not the same. They're completely different.
And to my point, I think it's not equal, but there is consistency. I mean, the word to me is we can have a consistent approach. You probably watered them similarly, fertilized them similarly.
I fertilized both. I planted both exactly the same.
Consistently.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Not equal. Not equal. And so I think an approach from a leadership standpoint can be consistent. You can have a consistent approach, but at some point the specific needs vary, and you must adapt. You must adapt and determine the path, the empathy meter. You have to determine the approach, their investment, your investment, and the outcome. And the outcome to me is what starts driving. That's where my energy gets either depleted or advanced. The energy level I have as a leader, if you are sucking the energy out of me because your outcomes for my investment are low, you're not giving the equal amount of investment, you're not performing, your outcomes are low, and I call it disengagement, low engagement, or excuses. That's where the consistent approach now varies, and it becomes a one-off. I'm gonna handle you differently, but I started with the consistent approach. And that's where it becomes not equal. And I shouldn't say just in that approach, because you have to see each person for what they are. As you get team members, as you grow team members, the needs change and you have to adapt. You can't always have the same approach always, but it can be consistent.
Well, you're not going to get two people. I don't care if you've got a two-man team,
Right.
they're both not going to be equal. They're just not. They come from different places. They got different experiences. They got different skill sets. They got different natural tendencies. They got different personalities. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other, but it could turn out
different.
It could turn out that one is better than the other. So when you plant trees, you have to know what zone you're in. Okay, well, zone 8. Zone 8. I don't know how many zones there are, but obviously you go further up north and it's a different zone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a reason that you go all through the deep south and you're going to find just a boatload of pine trees and things. You go up to the Pacific Northwest, you're going to see a ton of evergreen kind of trees. You don't see a ton of evergreen trees down in the
Right.
Well, there's a reason for this. Climate and soil have something to do with this. You can have an organization that could be a great culture, a great climate and soil for certain types of people. Now, I grant you that the Googles and the Amazons of the world, who hire hundreds of thousands of employees, have probably got places for any kind of person. But most of our organizations aren't like that. Our organizations aren't of the scope and scale, like that. And so I think part of it is we need to face the truth. We need to face the truth about who and what we are. And I think even before that, maybe the proverbial elephant in the room is you got to decide, do you want to be a high-performing organization or not? Because to be a high-performing organization takes work. It takes a lot of work. Completely worth it. Extraordinarily worth it. But it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of discipline. If you want to be all things to all people and you want to treat everybody equal, you can certainly do that. Every city's got the right to do that. Just don't expect to be the best, because you're not going to be.
Right.
You're not going to be the best at everything, whether it's the Olympics or whether it's whatever your sport of choice may be. Not everybody can be that.
Right.
There's a price to be paid for that. I ask every city manager, I ask every deputy city manager, I ask every director in my work, somebody is the best. Somebody, somewhere in America, there is the best municipal government HR director. Somewhere there's the best Parks and Rec director. Somewhere there is the best city government. I don't know who that is. I don't know where they're at. I know some that are pretty stinking strong, but I don't know who's the best. But somebody has to be. So my question is, why not you? Well, you're not going to do it unless you start paying close attention to where you put your focus and who you give your energy. I learned a long, long time ago, especially in managing sales people, the highest performers, they're high maintenance in that they want what they need to do even better, to do even more. So they're very demanding in that regard. My analogy that I came up with very early on is plow horses and race horses. I don't know much about racehorsing, but I can watch the Kentucky Derby or any of these big races, and after the race is over, you see sometimes these $1 million horses, or if not multi-million-dollar horses. I mean, man, they're out there. They got a soap bucket. They're getting bathed.
They get massages.
They're getting pampered. They are getting, I would imagine they're getting pretty selective kind of grains and foods to eat. They are treated well. Take some old plow horse on some old farm somewhere in the middle of nowhere. That poor animal is just hoping to get, some stale hay. Wouldn't have a clue what to do with if somebody tried to give it a bath, or wash it down.
Right.
you're going to make a whole lot more money if the racehorse is a winner. And so they need some pampering. And I've also found that high performers like to brag. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but in a good way. They like to brag about the accomplishment. Are they looking for some validation? They are. Are they looking for some cheerleading? They are.
They don't do it often,
no,
but they will do it.
Yeah. Are they looking for some applause from the stands? They are. Mm-hmm. And if we are so distracted with that person who is, to your example of your own life, this 80-20 thing, if we're spending 80% of our time, I'm just desperately trying to get this person up to average. Mm-hmm. Be tickled if I just got them up to average.
From a D to a C.
Yeah, just be tickled with that, and can't seem to get that done. And by the way, you'll never get that done. Doesn't mean that you can't get it. Again, it depends. 6 weeks in, they don't look like, okay, 10 weeks in. Now they've moved up. So context matters here, people. But I so desperately want people to build high-performing organizations. And one of the top 3 things that I hear everywhere I go, and it doesn't matter if it's municipal government, it doesn't matter if it's private sector, it doesn't matter what the space is. One of the top 3 things, and it's usually either number 1 or number 2, is I'm just sick of being tethered to that. Mm-hmm. And that is representative of a low performer. That is representative of somebody who doesn't toe the line, and we're always having to make up for them, and we're always having to drag them along, and they're holding all the rest of us back. Why they won't do something about them, I don't get it. And that frustration just pours over. It pours over. I have built high-performing teams in business and in sports, and I know this, and this will be my last hooray about this, because I could go on for a long time about this. I'm pretty passionate about this because it, in my mind, is the chief killer to high performance in an organization, is trying to tolerate or put up with low performance, trying to excuse it, and trying to urge people to, well, let's give them another chance. All about it. All about it if we're giving them the first one. All about it if we're giving them the second one. Not all about it if we're up to number 3. We're talking about adult people that we hired, assuming that we did, that we hired. They got in our organization. So somebody somewhere brought them on board thinking they could do it. Well, if they can't get it done after one real serious correction, a second serious correction, I don't have a third correction in me. Mm-hmm. Y'all do you, but I don't have it in me because I got stars over here that are waiting for me to give them the time and attention they deserve, and I can't give it to them because I don't have it. I'm too busy over here fighting, Mr. Unwilling. I'm not going to fight Mr. Unwilling. I'm not going to give my empathy to him. I'm going to have so much empathy for these people who are suffering at the hands of the non-performer. I'm just going to extract them. I'm just going to hit the eject button. We're going to move on down the road. They'll find a place. They'll do well, I hope. And if they don't, it's not my fault. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on down the road.
Yeah, it becomes so challenging when you're talking about empathy, and we talk about consistent approach, and then you're not getting the outcome that you desire after the energy and effort. The question becomes, why are we not handling it? Why are we not taking action that we need to take for the benefit of the individual and the organization?
And now your leadership is at risk because of that.
That's right. Because you are being watched. You are being judged by your team that is seeing this happen. And, Randy and I here can't understand for the audience the issues that you have before you as to why you can't do something if you're in that position. But I would tell you need to explore it. There is always an option to address it. It's just the how and getting to the end point. We all have challenges. We all have challenges of it could be, people that are above you that say, take your time. It could be you're in a position that there are challenges politically. There could be challenges from a leadership standpoint that, there's just so many things that affect each of us individually when we are trying to make a decision. But don't lose sight of there's always the ability to influence that over time. It's just figuring out how, right? It's figuring out, how do I need to get to that point? If you see what needs to happen, it's then how do you navigate that, either with those involved in the decision, or if you're the sole person, why are you not acting? I would explore those things. That's what's going to count, and figuring out, because you are not helping you are not helping that individual, and you're not helping the organization if you retain them. If you have tried, and to your point, you've gone to the first step, you've gone to the second chance, you're at the third chance, or you're at multiple people who have had the exact same experience in leading a person. I've seen that happen before, and they get passed around to the organization because, I've seen that happen.
Oh,
we've all
common.
had, we've all had that happen. Just move them. Just move them.
Well, think about cancer. So, okay, I've got breast cancer. Okay, well, let's move that to a different part of your body, but we're going to keep it.
Yeah.
See how that works out. It just doesn't work. You have to be willing to say no in order to say yes. So my question that I would leave the audience with is, what and who are you going to say no to so that you can determine who and what you're going to say yes to? I'm putting forth the argument. Say no to low performance. Say no to unwillingness. Say no to the excuse makers. Say no to the people who won't accept responsibility for their own output and their own outcome, so that you can say yes to the high performers. And so you can say yes to the people that are going to take that hill because you said take the hill.
Yes. And why?
Let's say yes to the right people, and we have to say no to the wrong people just so that we can. So I have enough empathy. I can give the empathy to one group, but I can't give it to both simultaneously because it's inconsistent. It doesn't work. I can't embrace a no while embracing a yes. So in that regard, for me, it has to kind of be binary. The low performer, I've got empathy up to and including the point when they've proven to me, I'm not willing. I know what you want me to do, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, that's fine. That's a choice you have every right to make, and I respect your right to make it. But you're going to have to respect my right to determine you're not going to be able to continue here. You can't stay on my team.
It's interesting because I've kind of seen this in two personalities over time, and I'd be interested in you, Randy. I feel it doesn't matter whether you're city government, private sector, public sector, ISD. It doesn't matter. I've seen two types of individuals. I've seen one, the type that just can't see it, no matter what you do and what you try to encourage them to do.
We're talking about the employee.
The employee.
Okay.
When you're trying to be consistent, you're trying to have empathy, you're trying to see where they need to grow, and you keep trying to take them along on the ride to grow. And they say they're willing, but they can't see it. If they cannot recognize it, you're in a no-win situation. It will never improve because they can't understand the gap. They don't see it in themselves. I've seen that, and I've never been able to convert that ever.
Well, they
because
don't
once they can't see
they
it,
don't agree with your assessment. They can think that they're doing great. Mama told me I could sing wonderfully. Okay,
Yeah.
well, your mom was wrong.
Yeah,
And I'm not your mom.
exactly.
Because you can't sing, you can't carry a tune in a bucket.
But they can't see it or don't believe it, right? The
Yeah.
other ones are just, I call it willful. They're just willful disregard.
Rebellious.
It's more, yes, it's more intent of rebellion that you don't know what you're talking about. I am amazing. And therefore it is always you that's wrong. And they just dig their heels in. Those are the two types that I'm willing to change, but won't change because I don't see the necessity for it.
Yeah, and
It's
what are
different
you gonna,
than being unwilling.
And what are you going to do differently with each one of those?
Nothing. It's the exact same approach.
That's exactly right.
But my point being to the audience, It doesn't matter the personality type. Have you seen anything different than those two that I've missed,
No,
Randy?
I mean that boils it
It's
down.
yeah, it's unwilling and digging my heels in, and then I'm willing to change, but I can't see it, so I don't change because I can't understand what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
for me, they both boil down to they're both unwilling. One's just more rebellious about it than the other.
Right. And so
They're unwilling
ultimately,
to accept responsibility, that's for sure.
the question I always get, and I've faced it in my life as well, is I just feel so bad because I'm impacting their livelihood. Well, frankly,
No,
you're impacting your livelihood. You're
they're in,
impacting your livelihood as a leader because you not taking care of it or helping them see the light and getting them in a place where they're happy. It is not helping you. It is not helping your team, and it is not helping the organization. And ultimately, to your point, you helped me see, Randy, when they leave at the end of the day, is there going to be a what? A weenie roast or a funeral? And on low
yeah.
performers, it is always a weenie roast. They are celebrating, thank God you finally did something about it. So don't be that leader that they are waiting and you don't take action because you will lose your high performers. Absolutely.
Well,
100% of the time.
and it's I think too few leaders really consider the toll. So let me use a church metaphor. So a man gets up and he preaches a sermon and he can't preach a lick. And we're supposedly here to worship God. Okay, well, but he thinks he can preach. So he gets up there and he holds forth for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever. And you can't argue, okay, well, he is impacting everybody's worship. Yes, he is. He is. And by tolerating that, you're letting him. Same thing at work. So as a leader, if you're going to tolerate it, put up with it, and you can, just know that you're not impacting their career, your career, but you're impacting everybody else's career that's on the team. You just are. Because there are people who are privately making decisions whether to stay or whether to go because of who they have to play with. And high performers just get tired of playing with low performers. So let me bring it full circle and we'll wrap this up. The empathy that you show, and whatever that looks like for you, however you display that, I have my own methodology and my own way that I roll that's congruent with my personality and my strengths. You figure that out. Just know this, if you're going to display empathy for high performers, you will not be able to display empathy for the low performer and have it look the same way. I would argue that I am somewhat empathetic to the low performer to the extent that I want them to move on and figure something else out because this ain't working. This ain't working for me. It's not working for you. It's not working for the rest of the team. So here's your last check. See ya. And hope you figure it out. And I do. I don't wish anybody ill. I don't want people, okay, you were a miserable failure here. I hope that this is the rest of your life. I don't feel that way. That's not how my empathy displays itself. I think it is an act of empathy to part company. I think it is an act of empathy to let people know, you're a dogwood. I'm growing willow trees here. Forestry Service, I'm in Arkansas right now as we hit the record button. And the place where I'm at used to be owned, it was Weyerhaeuser land, huge timber company. Well, they don't want to just harvest or grow any kind of tree. You and your organization, you need to figure out what are we, who are we, and who do we want to be? Who do we most want to be? Now, hire to the best of your ability congruent with that. Full well knowing, okay, I thought I had a pine, looked like a pine, turns out not a pine. Mm-hmm. And I'm growing pine trees. You've got to be fair to what you're growing. You got to be fair to the people that are in your organization. You got to be fair to who you are and what you are. And I really think the heavy lifting when it comes to this display of empathy begins with that. You may not be a city manager. You may not be in control of the overall. But if you are a director, if you're a director, you certainly have the opportunity and the ability to determine your group. If you're a supervisor and you've got a street crew and there's 4 of you, you've certainly got the opportunity to determine how you guys and gals roll. So wherever you're at, grow where you're planted. Just give your time and your attention to the people that are absolutely putting in the hard work and the sweat and the blood and the tears to go take whatever hill it is that you're taking. And those people that you're dragging along, find some way to offload that dead weight that's holding all the rest of you back.
100%. You have to, one, I would say, give the effort and energy initially when you're working with each team member that they need to develop. At the point you see they are unwilling or unable to get where you need to be, develop a plan, and you've got to continue your energy and effort on the high performers, offboard, to your words, the low performers, and don't take a long time to do it. It is disadvantageous to the team, to you, and to the city, and it has no productive outcome. You're just delaying the inevitable.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.